Let's move on to our final topic of the night. We're going to talk some Orioles here, the best team in the AL, I would say, at this point in time. And things have been looking good, John. Everything's clicking mostly, but man, does Craig Kimbrell suck this year?
He has had his struggles, and they are working through them. I think that having the Orioles, according to Bobby.
Stop getting distracted, John. Go.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, in terms of Craig Kimbrell, he's had his struggles. He's had his issues. Looking at his numbers now, ERA is not where definitely not where he wants to be. Definitely not where the Orioles want him to be. But it right now it's closer by committee. In terms of where they stand in terms of pitching, ERA they're third. In terms of saves, they're third. Win totals for pitching, they're second. You got to you know you got to factor all these things in. And when it comes to the Orioles, there's been a lot of injuries on that pitching staff. From Grace Rodriguez, Tyler Wells, obviously John Means, Kyle Bradish starting on the IL to start the season. You know, they have the Orioles been very, very good for all of the adversity they've had to uh, deal with on the pitching side uh, in terms of overall record, in my opinion. And I think that their biggest issue in terms of everything is like hitting right now. It's they're slumping, but they'll come out of that, and that's a definite thing. They are going to come out of it. They'll be the team that they should be, and they're going to continue to be one of the best teams in baseball. Uh, Definitely, I am confident in saying that, both as an Orioles fan and as somebody who talks about baseball on the internet for all of you. So
Yes. I thought you were about to say for a living, and I was like, I don't know what money you're earning because I'm definitely not
no,
gonna.
no, no. If I
Um,
if I'm able to do this for a living, set set.
look, I think Kimbrel hasn't been great, and I think that's really a big part for them, though. I mean, they're last year they had Felix Bautista back there, and he was a sure thing, and you have a
It's an
lot of
adjustment.
inconsistencies back there.
It's an
It is, but
adjustment.
like,
But it's
look,
not like the bullpen itself has been.
yeah,
It's not like the collective bullpen has been bad. It's not like
mhm.
the
I don't know. From the
collective
way you talk to me,
pitching
you hate
staff.
half of the guys you have in the bullpen.
No, 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 no. I don't know what you're talking about. In
Let's see,
terms,
Bauman,
no, no, no.
Akins,
Terms
Kimbrel,
of terms of
Perez.
everything while
That's
on
already
air.
four.
Let's put it this way: while on air, in all seriousness though, the bullpen pitching rotation has been very good from all of the injuries they've had to deal with and all the adversity. I mean, you have Craig Kimbrell, who is currently struggling, and they're working through that, and I have total faith that they will work through it. Do I know if he'll be in a the closer that the Hall of Fame closer that he will go in as? I don't know. I don't really think so. I think he's doing really well as just a relief pitcher in general. But it's definitely an adjustment from the reliever of the year
yeah.
to anyone in general.
I,
So
but I mean, also with Kimbrel too, right? Like he's going to be 36, 36, I think it is in 2 weeks. Yeah, 36 in 2 weeks. So it's like you're seeing this, you're seeing the start to the season you're seeing what he did last year in the playoffs for the Phillies. Although overall he was pretty good in the regular season for them. And it's just a little concerning. And then Will had brought something up about, hey, look how good Mason Miller is doing in Oakland, and then like I think a day later, a report came out that they're open to trading him, and it's like, huh, this is an interesting possibility. I mean, what are your thoughts of that prospect of the Orioles potentially looking to add a guy like Mason Miller?
If there is a team in baseball that can afford trading a big package to the A's to get Miller and not destroy their future, it's the Orioles. and to have a potential back end of the bullpen after 2024, so 2025 and beyond, of Cano, Miller, and Bautista, that would easily be the strongest back end in baseball. And the Orioles would have an absolutely killer pitching staff all around.
I think it almost makes too much sense, right? Like because you have, and John, I'll let you kind of speak on this because you know more about their prospects than anybody, but uh, they have a lot of guys that are position blocked right now in the minors, and it's like you have a surplus of positions. If this is a guy Mason Miller who, I mean, he is doing stuff this year that is absolutely unbelievable. His FIP, which is fielder independent pitching, is literally in the negatives, which I did not know was possible prior to the season. Like he could go out there with nobody in the field and still be okay. Essentially, is what that means because he's striking at so many people. So it's like for the Orioles, this guy's young. He's got promise. You have prospects you can trade because they're blocked from other players. Like to me, as Will said, it makes too much sense of you have a team that can sell a little bit of their future at positions they're already good at for a guy that they can be set for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would love that move. The question is, how much are the Athletics going to want? Yeah, if I remember correctly, think it was either last year or the year before. It was right after we had drafted Jackson Holiday. That I think it was the White Sox we were in talks with, and they just kept asking for Jackson Holiday, and so, Jackson Holiday, and these two guys, and we didn't want to do that. So it really depends on what the numbers say and what the trade could be in terms of what it could you know what Oakland wants. Um, but in terms of everything, you got to look at what the asking price is. You got to look at what you're getting. I would love to have Mason Miller. I That arm is deadly. In all honesty, but yeah, in terms of setting up the pitching rotation, the bullpen, the just the staff in general for the next, I want to say probably five 5 years, 10 years. That could be really important and really big. But we'll have to see. We would. I'm curious as to what the asking price is because it's not going to be cheap and it's not going to be you know inexpensive.
But
It's
I
the same
think,
thing.
well, here's what I'll say from the athletic standpoint. Like, yes, Mason Miller has been great for you this year. He's been, um, well, I was going to say putting butts in seats, but I don't think you can really say that. But
Well,
like,
hold on,
he's
hold on.
bringing
Did,
hype
did
to
you
the team.
see? Speaking of Mason Miller, did you see his quote? They asked him, "Why don't you get a special entrance?" And he says, "I don't think the
No,
lights can
yeah,
come back on."
yeah, that's so good. But like, okay, from the athletic standpoint, it's good to have a guy like this who's electric and stuff like that. But if you're looking at the long-term prospects of the team, this guy is a reliever. And what is the value there overall when maybe you can get a guy, a couple position players that can round out your lineup for the future? So I think I wasn't surprised by them coming out and saying, "Hey, we're looking," he's not on the market per se, but we're open to offers, and I'm
I would
sure
say he
the
is on the
asking price.
market.
Yeah,
I
and
think
look, I
I
think
think
the
everybody's
asking
on the
price.
market.
I think the asking price is going to be high. It should be. He's right now. He's as his value couldn't be any higher right now, essentially. But I think for them, it just makes too much sense. Of like, hey, this guy's a reliever. Like I know he was starting for games for them last year, but it looks like he'll probably stay in that reliever role. And it's like, okay, that's a closer is great in baseball, but like a really good second baseman would be pretty cool too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like for them, it makes a lot of sense. Will, what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely think the Orioles should go for Miller. I mean, they even if the A's, which I actually don't feel like they would do, ask for a Holiday, as long as you can give them enough of a return, odds are if there is a blockbuster trade done, it'll probably revolve around Kobe Mayo because he is position blocked the most on the Orioles, and I don't really see him fitting in unless something drastically happens in the future, injury wise or something. So if the Orioles probably compose a deal that involves maybe two of their top 10, maybe even top five overall prospects, one of them being Mayo, and then a combination of two to four other prospects, that's lesser. That is not saying John should have his Orioles give up half of their top 10 for this, but I do think the Orioles have what it takes to bring in Miller. And right now, with the uneven nature of Kimbrel's pitching throughout the season, having someone that can solidify their back end could be what they need to really get farther into the postseason this year.
And I'm looking at like their prospects and their lineup right now, and I do agree. I think Kobe Mayo is probably the centerpiece of that trade if it goes down, because he's kind of blocked there. But it's also, I mean, looking at all this, like I think Enrique Bradfield, he was just drafted, wasn't he, or was that the year
Yeah,
prior?
he
So
was
like
just drafted.
so, I don't know if they're going to want to move on there, but I just think you have some options there. And again, probably starts with Kobe Mayo, but like, would they maybe move on to like a fringe guy in the MLB right now that like the A's might um, overpay for it in a way? Cause it's like, okay, this is a better than the guy we have right now. I just, again, I think it makes too much sense for the Orioles. And, yeah, I mean, if you have a guy that, and Kobe Mayo that is not going to make it. Trade him for a guy that can make an impact. Because right now, I don't want to say their window is now. Obviously, they have an extremely young team, but you're going to have to start paying these players at some point, right? So,
That's not
you
for another
know,
5 years for
oh,
a
I
lot
know,
of these
but like
guys.
I'm saying, like at some point you're gonna want to like, okay, we're gonna have to start paying people, whatever. And I think like they want to take advantage of the years that they have. Like this, I do believe the Orioles right now are the best team in the AL, and I think they're gonna look at this as okay, this is an opportunity for us to. Pick up a piece in Mason Miller now, who is going to be dominant now, will be dominant in the future, and we're going to do as well as we can. I just think it's a good trade for them.
My issue with Mason Miller is the same issue I have with Paul Skeens, and honestly, we saw it happen with Felix Bautista. You throw over 100 miles per hour, you're asking for your UCL to explode. Honestly, like
Yeah.
Oh, it'll
that's my
happen.
opinion. Like that's where I'm at, and you have to take that into account when you're thinking about making these trades. And Mike Elias, honestly, I think he's the best GM there is in baseball. In what he's been able to do in terms of rebuilding, Brandon Hyde as the manager, I think is an amazing manager for what he was able to go through regarding this rebuild. Um, you got to really it- I know they're going to be looking at it like and take those things into account, and we'll have to see. But it doesn't make the most sense, yeah. But do I think it's going to happen? Not really. I think that another team is going to be willing to sell the farm per
Yeah.
se to get him, whereas like the Orioles
What
are gonna.
about them Phillies?
Well, look,
I
they
don't.
had
I don't think because all of your. I don't know how your farm system is, to be honest. But in terms of the most value, I think the
I've
most
toyed
value
around with
comes.
trades in my brain.
Well, I think the most
well,
value comes from your major league, and the thing we have to take in consideration with the Athletics, they're on a smaller window than even the Orioles with the guys they have right now in terms of when they make big splash trades like this for young guys. When they get called up, they know they're not going to get paid. They know they're going to get traded. They know they're going to be sent
mm,
off for peanuts. So it's like, you know, the Athletics they have to take those things into account just because that's the way they're run. You know,
yeah, I mean, it's the A's. This is what we come to expect for them, and I think, again, to me, it just makes more sense for them to trade a guy in a position that is not as important and get some guys. But well, actually, I'm going to throw it to you because the Phillies have also kind of been like up there as a mock team that he could go to. I mean, what does a trade for the Phillies look like? I mean,
The
Obviously,
Bra-
he'd be a big piece.
the Braves would never overtake them. I will say that.
Oh wow,
I mean,
he's
the
calling
short
the
answer
shot.
is I don't think this would happen, but I mean, the way I look at it is this. The one person I think the Phillies would not trade whatsoever is Andrew Painter, who is still recovering from Tommy John surgery anyway. But he could potentially make his major league debut sometime next year. That being said, I know in the past they've said their prospects like Aiden Miller, was it Crawford?
Yeah,
Um, I forget the initials. And then Aiden Miller were kind of the off limits trade pieces. Right now, if the Phillies wanted to get Aiden Miller, I could see the package mainly revolving around Aiden Miller and Mick Abel. And that's because Abel, at least in my eyes, the way I see reports with him, he still isn't having the control the Phillies would want in their rotation. And right now, the Phillies are kind of in a they're kind of creating a tough situation for them, a good situation. But now that they've locked down Nola and Wheeler for the first next 3-4 years or whatever, having both of them, that is, their pitching staff is kind of covered through like 2026 or so because they have Ranger Suarez, I believe, through 2026, just because of arbitration. Talman Walker still has 2 more years, and Christopher Sanchez probably has 3 years at least of team control. So just from that, you have your current five locked up as is, but they want Painter to come to the majors. So if they were trying to find ways to get Painter and able to come into the majors, that's kind of going to be difficult without shifting some guys around unless injuries suddenly destroy someone's career in a year or so, which please God don't let that happen. But Abel is now turned into more of an, I guess, expendable piece for the right person. And Aiden Miller is someone I know the Phillies like a lot in the minor leagues. He's only in single A, I think, right now, and was drafted,
yeah,
I think, last year.
yeah. He
So
was.
he's a third base first baseman. Harper's locked up, and Bohm is taking huge strides every year, and has seemed to have taken another one this year. So Miller's getting blocked position wise. That is really the starting point. That's all I can say for that. The Phillies still would have to give up a huge package. Dave Dombrowski is not shy about making giant blockbuster deals if he sees fit. Maybe if the Phillies feel like they need to throw another top guy in there because of the way their situation is, they would be trading away Crawford because their outfield is kind of covered right now with um, Marsh and Rojas mainly. Castellanos, I know they still have for 2 more years after this year, but he can slide into a DH role after a year or so when Schwarber becomes a free agent after 2025. But anyway, um, but in the Phillies case, though, it would pretty much deplete their farm system is the only thing. However, given the Phillies' recent postseason success, but
Win
haven't gotten
now.
the World Series, this I was gonna say, yeah, this is as much of a win now as you would expect, especially with Harper and Turner with big contracts been in their primes. JT Realmuto's nearing the end of his contract. You have your best years of Wheeler right now, maybe your best year probably ever for Ranger Suarez, and Aaron Nola's looking like ace Aaron Nola that you had back in like 2018 or 19 when he was like third in Cy Young voting. Like this is as much win now as it seems to have ever been for the Phillies. So maybe it is time they pull the trigger and say, you know what, we'll give away a big chunk of the farm system because we have all these guys locked up and we want to get this core ring.
And again, I think it has to be for the right guy, and Mason Miller might be that guy. But I think the Phillies, as much as they might be in love with Aiden Miller, it's like okay, he's as you said, kind of position blocked anyway. He's also only 19. So, like, if you want to have this win now mentality, he's not going to help you for a couple years down the line at least. And you know that Mason Miller is basically a sure thing at this point. You just never know with prospects. So, I think probably you're right. I think a trade starts there or with Mick Abel or both if it was to happen. But I think, again, for the Phillies or really any of the top teams like that are looking to really shore up their back end. I think Mason Miller is a guy that is worth looking at to bring in because he's just been so good. And again, I tend to think guys that throw really really hard. I know there's injury concern there, but the guys that throw really really hard do tend to be successful more than guys that don't. So again, you have more of a sure thing there, but. Yeah, it could get very interesting. I think for the A's because you finally have somebody there who's like, hey, bringing eyes to the A's or somebody to look at. And credit to the A's, they've actually been decent this year. But now you're like, 40 games into the year, it's like, oh, we should trade our pride and joy right now. Like it's a revolving door in Oakland.
I think this is going to be going on until at least the end of June.
Oh
Honestly,
yeah, I think.
I think this will be trade deadline buzz. I think the A's are going to wait out as long as possible to try to get the best deal. And if it doesn't happen in their mindset, hey, we still got the guy. We can do it again in the offseason. We can do it again next year. It's not like they have to do it now. So, in other words, they're trying to see if teams are desperate enough to give them a big enough package.
until
But
he
I think
either gets hurt or has to get paid, it's what it comes down to.
I just don't know how his value could really get. I mean, it could get higher if he consistently is pitching like this, I guess. But like he's as good as he cannot be better than what he is right now. Like
As
that's
long
what I'm
as he
saying. Like,
doesn't get hurt, he will have high value.
but
That's
is that a concern for them, right? Because it's like, okay, if he goes out and like, oh, he does get hurt, and I just feel like for the A's, there's a little bit of a risk in keeping him just because you don't know what's going to happen. Where right now it feels like this is his ceiling in terms of what value you're going to get. Like I really do believe that. Like I don't think he could be
I
any
don't think
better than he is. So
if you're the A's,
I
I
mean,
don't
with the
think you
Tommy
worry about
John
that.
scare,
I don't
with the
think you worry
Tommy
about that.
John scare, you see them trying to beat that in a trade. However, Tommy John is not something you can predict. You can predict based on age and the type of player, on how hard they throw, who will likely get it. So if he hasn't had it
yeah.
yet, then therefore there's that concern. But to say, is he going to have it tomorrow? Is he going to have it in 3 years? It's hard to really say on that. But I do see them potentially trying to beat that, since more and more headlines are all about more players go under the knife. Who's going to be next? Teams are now watching workload because they're concerned about Tommy John injuries to certain players. So, I mean,
Well, he is
I just
24.
think the A's are a team that are gonna. I don't think the A's are still going to be a team that feels pressured. If anything, it's because I don't think ownership knows what they're doing half the time. But
That's true.
I mean, that
I
is a
you
mean,
get
factor.
on the right
Yes.
field, they'll say sure. But
yeah, I mean
In terms of his
honestly,
age being a factor, from what we saw, more Tommy John cases were for guys under like 25, I think. Uh,
like
26,
20,
or 20
26 and
was it
26,
under.
26? Okay, well he's
yeah.
24, so he's at that. He's coming close to that benchmark of okay, this might be where he's at, and which is great for him for the A's, because he's
Yeah, he'll
24
snap
right
it.
now. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, you don't know, and it could change in his case. But in terms of the trend, that there's he at least has that going for him.
Yeah. I think there also is probably a cap on how much you're going to get from a reliever anyway in a trade, and I think to me that all culminates into I think I would not be surprised if in like the next month or month and a half that he gets shipped out because if he keeps doing what he's doing and then demand is high because I think it's going to be high, they're going to feel like the package we're going to get now is as good as it's going to get or close to as good as it's going to get, and we don't have to take the risk of an injury or him falling off or whatever. So again, I
Also,
think for him that makes sense.
I messed up. He's not 24. He's 25. But
I was gonna say I thought he was
yeah.
not that that really matters.
I
But.
read his age when he debuted.
Now
That's
He's got the arm of a 24-year-old.
now I also don't know too like if he would ever be considered to go back into a starting role for a team. That's a whole other conversation, but I just think that there is a lot of value in this guy right now for what he could be or is now, and he'd make a team very happy.
I
Throwing
think
115.
when you have this success in the role that you do, that's typically the slot you're in. You don't typically see guys go from uh the bullpen to being a starter when they're having this much success.
Yeah.
Um Especially as guys age. I mean, you see it the other way around where older guys will become bullpen arms. You do see that, but you very seldom see a bullpen arm at this age go into a starting role. So
Yeah.
Jordan Hicks, Ronaldo Lopez, Seth Lugo.
Again,
He's older.
seldom.
Michael King. AJ Puck.
Okay, AJ Puck is
I
horrible.
could probably
He
name
doesn't
more.
count.
I didn't
AJ
say
Puck
they
is
were successful.
horrible.
I'm just rattling off examples.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
Again, I'm gonna say success.
Yeah.
All right, Ronaldo Lopez, Seth Lugo.
We could do this all day, but we're
How
gonna
much time
end
do
it
we have?
there.